Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a really interesting question. Is there a simple, elegant formula for business success? Something we can just plug numbers into. And you might be surprised where we're going to look for the answer. Not in finance, but in psychology. Let's get into it. So, let me ask you this. Can you measure a company's happiness? I know, it sounds a little out there, right? But just think about it for a second. What if we could analyze a successful, thriving business in the same way we think about a happy, thriving person? That's the big idea we're going to unpack today. So our whole investigation starts with this formula from psychologist Dr. Sonja Lyubomirsky. It looks super simple. H equals S plus C plus B. H is for happiness. S is our genetic set point. C is for our life circumstances. And B is for our intentional behaviors. It's a really powerful way to break down what makes us tick as people. But this is the part that just blows me away. When you break it down, our genetics, that's our set point, makes up a whopping 50%. Our circumstances, our job, how much money we make, that's only about 10%. But look at this last chunk. A massive 40% of our happiness comes from our intentional behaviors, the things we actively choose to do, day in and day out. That is a huge piece of the pie that's totally within our control. Okay, so that leads us to the big pivot. If this framework worked so well for people, could we actually apply it to something as complicated as a company? Can we translate this happiness code from psychology into the language of business? To do that, we've got to figure out the corporate equivalence, right? If a company was a person, what would be its genetic set point? What would its life circumstances look like? And the big one, what are its intentional behaviors? Let's try and map this out. And here's what that translation looks like. S, the set point, is like the company's DNA. It's the industry it's in, its business model, the stuff that's pretty much fixed. You'll find that in the business description section of its 10K, which is kind of like its annual report card. C, circumstances. Well, that's the external market conditions and its internal financial health, which you can see right in the financial statements. But B, the behaviors? That's where the magic happens. Those are the intentional, strategic choices you can actually track through its cash flow and profit and loss statements. And this is where it gets really interesting. We're going to focus on that 40%, the intentional behaviors a company actually has control over. Because it turns out you can find the clues to these behaviors hiding in plain sight, right inside those public financial documents. So here's the key. A company's spending is way more than just a list of costs. It's basically a roadmap of its priorities. It tells you exactly where the company is placing its bets for the future. If you want to decode its behavior, you just have to follow the money. So, our first intentional behavior is strategic investment in the future. In the financial world, you'll see this as capital expenditures, or CapEx. Now, don't let the jargon fool you. This is simply a company choosing to spend money on things like new factories or better technology to make itself stronger for the long haul. I love this quote because it just nails it. Strategic CapEx is a company proactively investing in its future self. It's a conscious decision to spend money today to be more productive and competitive tomorrow. Okay, behavior number 2 is a big one, a commitment to innovation. And we can see this by looking at how much a company spends on research and development, or R&D. Think of R&D as the engine of progress. It's a company intentionally spending money to create new things and to avoid getting left behind. It's a direct signal of its ambition. And get this, some of the big tech companies like Atlassian, for example, will pour a staggering 35 to 45% of their revenue right back into R&D. That's not just an expense on a spreadsheet, that's a statement. It tells you that innovation is the core intentional behavior that's driving their entire strategy. Now for our third intentional behavior, and honestly, this might be the most important one. It's the investment in people. And we're not just talking about paychecks here. This is about creating an environment where people can do their best work through good benefits, training, and real well-being initiatives. It's a strategic investment in the human engine that powers the entire business. And, the data really backs this up.
This research shows a clear, direct line from investing in your people, often through things like corporate social responsibility programs, to getting real, tangible business results. We're talking higher engagement, lower turnover. These aren't just fluffy metrics. They translate directly into a healthier, more successful company. All right, so we've got our corporate S, C, and B. We should be able to just add them up to get a success score, right? Well, this is where our simple formula starts to break down. The real world of business, it turns out, is a little messier than a neat and tidy equation.
So why doesn't it work? Well, for a few big reasons. First, just because two things happen together doesn't mean one caused the other. But more than that, how on earth do you put a number on incredible leadership or a fantastic company culture? Plus, what's a good R&D number for a software company is totally different for a car company. And finally, success isn't a finish line. Just like people, companies have to keep putting in the effort to stay on top. So instead of a simple addition problem, what's really happening is more like a virtuous cycle. A company makes a strategic investment in its people. That leads to better morale, higher productivity. That in turn leads to better financial results. And guess what? Those better results give the company more resources to invest right back in its people, starting the whole cycle over again. The pieces all feed into each other. So if our simple formula is a fantasy, then what's the answer? Did we fail our quest? Not at all. The solution isn't to give up. It's to build something better, something more intelligent, a smarter scorecard. The big idea here is that we have to move away from a rigid, one-size-fits-all rule. The real power comes from creating a flexible and intelligent framework that can actually adapt to the reality of any specific business. And that brings us to this, the weighted composite score. This is the sophisticated tool we were really looking for. Instead of treating everything equally, this method lets you combine all those different metrics, but, and this is the key part, it lets you assign a different weight to each one based on what actually matters most for that company. It all rolls up into a single, much more meaningful score. This chart just makes it crystal clear. A simple formula is rigid, it's one size fits all, and it completely misses the nuance. A weighted score, on the other hand, is flexible, it's dynamic. You can customize it to an industry, and it gives you a much more holistic view because it highlights what a company truly prioritizes. So what's the big takeaway here? Using a smarter scorecard like this gives us that holistic view of a company's well-being. We're swapping a rigid rule for a flexible framework. And that gives us the power to weigh what truly matters, which at the end of the day leads to much smarter, more informed decisions. And that really brings us full circle. We started this whole thing looking for a magic formula for success. And what we found is something I think is a lot more valuable. There is no single formula, but there is an incredibly powerful framework for understanding what makes a business tick. And that leaves me with one final question for you. If you were going to design one of these happiness scorecards for your own company, or maybe a company you really admire, what intentional behaviors, that crucial 40%, what would you choose to measure? What do you think really drives their success?